Now, or
Yeah,
we
we're live, but it's going to take a couple of minutes. It's going to take a
cool,
couple of minutes.
cool, but it's like a non-stop roller coaster at the moment, huh?
Yeah, slightly. Slightly. Let's leave this music on. See how it does. Uh, yeah, I just heard them next on. So it'll take another minute and a half. Yeah, it's been quite humbling. You know, it's
Yeah,
so many things happening. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's just hard to explain. But to me, there's a lot of things happening that never happened before, and we're doing things that we never did before. And the things that work are the things that we've never done before. You know, I mean, so there's so many different examples you can pull from. Like,
yeah.
I just read Morgan's post. I didn't know she wrote it. She was talking about sacred sexuality.
I've been reading your stuff, and
Hmm.
I want to say something for when we've gone live properly or whatever. There's something I wanted to say about
Yeah, yeah.
something I'd experienced watching you two, and
Is that
so
right?
yeah, so I'll wait until we
Yeah, so let me just, you know me, it's not ever formal here. It's just a conversation between two beloved brothers.
yeah,
I want to
indeed.
thank everybody real quick. I want to thank everybody. We've been getting suppressed again. We got 2 strikes from YouTube.
Hmm.
We have another YouTube channel we're going to launch, Soulogy Network, with excerpts from these shows every day. I've spent quite a bit of time downloading, and I'm pretty much done. So I'm going to start editing. And just as a routine every day, I'm going to go into the shows every day. Like we have 3 shows today. I'll go in and edit them, and then I'll start putting them out on our new YouTube channel. But I want to thank everybody for the continued love, support, and contributions. Allow us to keep doing this every day, and I mean that because I don't know how this happens. It's a miracle. It's all a miracle. But I just want to say thanks to everybody. So we got David Manning back, one of my favorite people to have a conversation with, conscious conversation. Yeah, go ahead. So if you had something you wanted to say, go ahead.
Yeah. It's great to be here, be with everybody. And I would just wanted to say, I've been watching you and Morgan in conversation and stuff, and I was aware that you were at opposite ends of the world, but I was that one that I tuned into. Maybe soon after Morgan had gone to Australia or something, and just watching the two of you in conversation, I was so overwhelmed by the purity of love that was obvious between the two of you. And it was so clear and so evident. And I was very, very deeply touched by just by the energy that was present with the two of you. And I just wanted to really acknowledge that you've both done something, I think, quite amazing. And it's obviously going deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's something really beautiful and very rare. And you're doing it in a public forum, and that's difficult too. So
Mm.
I just wanted to really acknowledge that and say thank you
Yeah.
to you both for what you're doing, because it's beautiful and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I mean, I was just reading her post that she put up, I guess, when I went to bed last night, and she talks about the sacred sexuality and how our there it started. It went on. It's been going on for a long, I guess, since the day we started, but 5 years plus years ago. But it was talking about how one night her masculine light body appeared, and then my feminine. We went through a period of about 6 or 7 days, and then it was both masculine, and then it was both feminine, right? But in that, she was just explaining. I don't want to spend the show talking about this, but she was just spinning the show. I mean, we were being prepared to be separated,
Yeah.
and I think this is about 2 weeks ago. I told her, I said, "Man, we made it." Like it just came out of me, like we made it. We actually did it. Our human selves had a difficult time with that download, but we spent 2.5 weeks in solitude, uh, you know, just taking it in and accepting it. And then I guess, it's gotten to the point now where I realize the importance of it. We've had a lot of downloads and stuff, but these are the type of things I think that are coming into play, and it's exciting. I mean, to the human, it's a little freaky. And I had people, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, people still kind of, I don't want to say stuck in the old paradigm, because we're all stuck in the old paradigm, but we're coming out of it. And it's sometimes a slow grind, and sometimes it's a roller coaster going down Magic Mountain, But it's just like this is the new way. We were, I think, instructed to do that because of the move and because of what we're anchoring. So it's nice to hear that somebody's getting something out of it. I think we're going to be opening up more about it now. But it's funny because David, because some people not being explicit, but just assuming that there's something wrong because it doesn't fit the paradigm of what our expectations have been about relationships. And and it's I'm just here to tell you that it's all, it seems to me that it's all in what we haven't done and haven't tried, to include magic, alchemy, sacred sexuality, and things that, are not the societal norm. So, but it's an exciting time. And it seems like it's a really, really all coming together as this year goes on. How you been?
Totally.
How's it been?
Good. I mean, it's good. I'm glad I've got to say that, because I think what you're doing is touching thousands of people, and it's not just a few people. It's a big field that you're generating, and a lot of people are touched by that. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
I had to take some time off.
That's
for the
right.
whole
We
July.
had we had our regular. We seem to hook up. I mean, she handles the scheduling, but I think we used to hook up like every
6
weeks,
months, something like
I think maybe. But then you sent me the note, a beautiful note, and said I got to take some time off. And at that time, that's what I was doing. I don't remember when that was. Was that July?
It was July. It was more or less the whole of July I took off, just because. I mean, I could feel the pressure building, and all of a sudden I was told, okay, you've got to step back now and just integrate stuff and allow stuff to fall apart. And that was. I hadn't done that for a long time. I'd been working nonstop, doing more or less a teleconference every weekend, and recognizing what not a strain, but it takes up a lot of space in your field when you're constantly holding a field, and so when I stopped, there was this 2-week period initially of just decompression and of almost just a very, very deep level of exhaustion coming to the surface that I hadn't even really acknowledged was there, and I don't think it was just from this time. I think some of the decompression is ancient decompression, because we have lived under massive levels of pressurization and suppression and repression and depression, in a sense, for thousands of years, and all of that is falling away now and opening up. And so it's extraordinary what's unfolding, and taking time off. And I know that's really not easy for a lot of people. My life is set up so I can do that, but particularly for people in the States, where there's this strong, we in Europe laugh at the people in the States because you get that amount of holidays if you're working for a corporation or something. You get a tiny amount of holidays. In Europe, you get like 3 times the amount you get in the States. But it's still lovely to be able to just close up shop and step back for a while, and really, really important to be able to do that. And sometimes if we can't, then the body will do it for us, and we'll get an illness that forces that, But those are precious times now where space and time allow so much more to happen than the doing does. It's more important to be with the energy and just allow things to unfold than it is to be doing, I think, very much. And of course, we all get our guidance on things that need to happen, things we need to pay attention to. But that thing of giving a lot of space is vital at the moment. And something that I've noticed Morgan writing about, and I've certainly been experienced, is this. deepest level of sexual trauma coming to the surface. So the energy is just moving in and pushing up to the surface, layer upon layer upon layer. And I had a sexually traumatic childhood, if you like, and went on to live in sex addiction along with other things. So it was, my sexual history was very, very messy in this lifetime. But what is happening now is seem to be dropping through layer upon layer upon layer of really dark stuff that is locked in our collective energy field around sexuality. And a lot of this is feminine. So I'm experiencing the feminine in my body. Maybe female lifetimes that I've experienced are just unfolding and giving up their history of sexuality and of rape and abuse and trauma. And it's not all, of course, it's not all that, but all of this is coming to light. And it's strange lying in bed, in the morning when I do a lot of this sort of inner exploration and feeling this female part of me inside terrified of being raped, of being wounded, and recognizing, oh, I've just got to hold this and allow this to unfold. And then it comes up and it integrates. And then there's another layer and another layer. And I think a lot of these things are probably happening for a lot of people without them even realizing it, without them even recognizing it. But if you're feeling really anxious or antsy or repulsed by sexuality or craving it, give space to that too, because I think there's a huge amount of sexual clearing of the fields of sexuality happening at the moment, and that's profound. It's very, very profound, and it's some of our darkest, deepest wounding has happened in the pelvis. We've been shamed and made to feel horribly guilty around sexuality, and of course, it's such an important element of our capacity to create is sexual energy, and the life force energy that rises from the earth into the pelvis is so. As it got corrupted successively, over hundreds and thousands of years, our capacity to create with purity, with integrity, was really diminished. And at some level, we all knew we were going on this journey of density, and all of that stuff was being closed down and collapsed down. But now we're really coming out of that, and we see it individually, but we're really starting to see it collectively as well. And I think there's some the energy of truth is very strong now, and it's emerging in us as individuals, but it's starting to really play out across the planet too. So it's weird looking at what's unfolding, really, really strange to see, and also recognizing, okay, so a lot of people I'm speaking to, and I'm not speaking to a lot of people at the moment, I have to admit, but are all still attempting to buy into the story that's being fed, but everybody is recognizing that it's looking very, very shaky now.
Yeah.
So it just looks as if it's about to topple at any moment.
It really is cartoonish, and I know I've said that over the years, but it's really silly. I mean, it really is. But you said something, and I certainly the theme of this month is the hero's journey, and to me, what you said about, well, it's a little confusing because we say the word sexual, and everyone jumps to the norm or the abnorm that we've accepted as norm, or the whole fucking distortion of sexuality. But it's really sacred sexuality, and I think the reason, and I'm going to say what you said and take it a little further, that is the root, no pun intended, of our what would you say, the suppression of our creative power is because of the distortion in our sexual lower chakras, or however you want to put it. But you said something that was really hit home, and I think because during that period, June, July, I did the same thing you did. The only difference is I was told you got to get up and do these shows, and I was like, I don't want to do them, and I actually just was a mess during that 2 weeks. I mean, I was just not present. But my point is that during if I wasn't on air, I was pretty much on my back, and I was integrating just like you were, just like your message said to me, and like so many people. But I think probably the high point, the high point of the integration was about sexuality, and what I was asked to do, or what I experienced, was to embrace every single aspect of what I knew to be sexuality, to include pedophilia, to include being raped, include being the perpetrator, to include um, masculine with masculine, masculine, feminine. I mean, every single thing. It was almost as if I didn't embrace it, that it wouldn't go away somehow. It wouldn't unclog. So I went into what was almost like a hallucinogenic experience. It was. There was nothing I used, but I was taken to like the deepest, grimiest, dirtiest, ugliest things. But to your point, I sat with them. I integrated them. I didn't try to judge it. I just, let it go. And I think you really brought up a great point, because you can't run from it. And if you have, it is my opinion, but if I have a resistance to, let's just say, if I'm homophobic, or if I'm sexist or misogynist, or whatever the case is around sexuality, if I think I'm not, that's not the point. The point is it's there, it's in the field, it's in our makeup, and it, in order for us to come into alignment, in my opinion, this has been part of the process. And it's really encouraging to me, David, because if we're doing this with the sexuality now, then I think big things are coming.
Yeah, I think we're really getting ready to create in a different way. And what I've noticed over the July is that the throat center is having an extraordinary clearing as well. And when I watched that, and I was working with individuals over that time, I just wasn't doing the teleconference, and I was watching people's throats really having this extraordinary clearing and deep healing is not even the word. It was just a clearing of what has been layered over the purity and the capacity of the throat again to create, because we did know how to speak things into manifestation. That's an innate part of our capacity, and we all know about that, the casting of spells, and that our body listens to everything we say and then plays it out for us. We know about this, but this has been downgraded massively, again with good purpose, because it would have been a nightmare to be living with those abilities through the thousands of years of shit that we've been walking. So now, I think as the pelvis is clearing, and all of this ancient wounding, and all of these layers we're working through, I think for me, we get to really own everything we've ever done. And we've been it all, we've done it all, we've been the heroes, we've been the villains, we've been the raped and the rapist, we've been the child that was molested and the child molested. We've done it all. And it all has to be accepted so that it becomes neutralized. I think Morgan will call that zero pointing, in a sense. It's just taking all of the charge out of it, so it's not held in the field and resisted. And it collapses. The field collapses all of those polarities of right and wrong and good and bad. And it becomes universal again, because the universe looks on everything with this extraordinary eyes of neutrality. And we get to share in that neutrality when we've done the work of integrating, of neutralizing it all. And then there's nothing holding up, no sticking points in the field, so that the energy of creation can move through us in the way that it wants to, rather than the way that we would want it to. Exactly. So we become clear channels. So what I'm seeing is that the pelvis is going through this extraordinary cleansing and purification, but the throat is too, so that the energy will rise through the system into the heart. And of course, our genitals and our heart have been disconnected as a species for thousands of years, but our heart and our throat have also been disconnected. So we've got a world that is just awash with lies. And now we're starting to come back into this solid alignment of truth and purity. And it doesn't feel like, if I look at myself and my life, I think, fuck, I'm not that. I'm not living purity. But it's not purity in every act and it's this purity and clarity of intent and coming into a deep alignment with the decision to incarnate and what we all knew we were incarnating for in this life. And the recognition that as more and more of us come into this alignment or just drop in, because it's becoming stronger and stronger for the collective every day, then a lot of the distortions are just going to collapse. They don't even need to be pushed particularly, because the energy of truth is such a strong currency that the lies and distortions don't have any foundation. And I think we're going to see this, but it's still going to be I think we're moving into a really messy period as things really start to tumble. And people that haven't really started to look at things I wouldn't want to be in that group now. It might have seemed like a nice place to be, sort of vaguely unconscious, but that would be a weird place to be now. And I think a lot of people are going to need perhaps a bit of hand-holding through the next few months, but it is exciting. But this thing of we're coming back into our capacity to create and our capacity to speak things into being and to speak from a place of truth and authority that isn't to do with the personality, but is spirit moving through us. So you speak with a voice of authority, simply because you're not coming from your personality structures. You're coming from a deeper alignment with universal truth as it flows through each of us. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And I do. People talked a lot about there would come a time when we'd be put to work. I know Morgan told me that for 5.5 years, and I've heard other people say, but I really think this is the time. And I think it looks, I read people's stuff, as I share into the group every day, look for stuff. And there's talk about the distortion, those that kind of prognosticate what's happening present and near future, that the distortion is going to get louder and louder. And there's going to be, from the human perspective, some very ugly things. But at the same time, I'm seeing this expansion of people like you, all over the place that at an individual level are like the eye in the hurricane. So it's weird because you got this parallel of an individual expanding, which is cookie cut all around the globe. And then you have equally the distortion growing, and it's some kind of weird paradox convergence that's occurring. But I think at the heart of it, listening to people this month, I think of a guy yesterday, a friend of mine, who came on and basically, without a charge, obviously it was kind of a bit cute. I've done quite a few shows with him, and he looked a bit rough, like some of us can right now, right? And but he was talking about his story, and it's Michael Whitefeather, if you guys want to watch it, from Israel. And we had a lot of distortion on the show, which is not a coincidence, but he was talking about his hero's journey, and it was quite moving because his memories were from a very young child, I believe 2 or 3. It was very young. Parents split. He can't. He's with his mom. His mom can't take care of him. He goes into a child's home, and he's molested. And then he comes out, goes into a new family, same mom, new siblings, and he replicates it. But now he's not the perpetrated, but the perpetrator, right? And so these things, to talk about these things without stigma, but is important. But I think the most incredible thing I've seen during these shows has been through the voice, through the throat chakra, the unspoken part of it that's affecting people. And one of the things that I see it doing is it's creating a field where people feel safe to come out and tell their story, because there's something about telling the story not as a victim, but as the hero.
Yeah.
That I more than made it. I more than survived. I transformed, and it's a powerful, powerful thing. I know you've talked about your journey on these shows. I know that you had a similar experience to my friend when you were younger. I remember reading years ago that your first sexual experiences are like major imprints. And if I look at my life and a few others that I've been privy to, those first episodes are very, very important. And they kind of set a template up.
Yeah, totally.
But I know that, and I also know from the previous shows, the powerful transformations that you've made physically and otherwise through your confrontations, or let's just say collaborations with what we term as disease or illness, serious ones, very serious for those who don't know, David. If I look at your story and I compare the incredible transformations and experiences you've had with cancer, with HIV diagnosis and such, the presence of that in your life, the way you've handled it and stuff. And then I look at what little I know about your early upbringing that you brought up when you were molested and whatever came from there. I have to look at what happened earlier versus these things that happened to you as an adult. And I just have a feeling that what happened earlier is somehow connected, number one, not just for you, but maybe for anyone. And number two, that would have to be like you could add up everything else and compare it to your transformation and journey and evolution experience of the sexual experiences and aspects and nature of your life. And I would think that would be like a giant compared to the illnesses. I don't know, and I'm speaking out of turn, but how much weight did the early part of your life being violated have an effect on you? I mean, how much?
It totally shaped my life, Todd, to be honest. It really did. And I was raped by an uncle, my mother's uncle, so my great uncle. He lived with my grandmother, and I would be taken there as a young child when my parents were going away, or when they were having a rough time in their marriage, and they had a pretty rough marriage. So, and I would be left there. And of course, my mother wasn't conscious, but I think, to be honest, because he moved into their house when her father died, when she was 3 and I was taken there at the same age, I think she almost unconsciously presented me to him at the same age, those carrying on those family patterns in a sense. And what it did for me, in hindsight, was, the impact of adult male sexual energy in a young child's body has an extraordinary, overwhelming impact, because it floods an undeveloped system with this strong energy, and it sort of fuses gateways open that shouldn't perhaps have been opened. Theoretically, I say shouldn't in inverted commas, because some of our life plan is set up. Some of these things are meant to happen in order that we get the experiences we're due to get. This idea of the hero's journey is lovely, but we set up the conditions, and afterwards, when I was in the process of healing this, because I suppressed a lot of the memories and didn't, that's a great healing capacity we have, to lock these things into the subconscious until we're ready to bring them out. But when I did, and I was asking, why was my life like this? Why was my life like this? I had this dream the night I asked that question, where I was on an island, and I was an old man living outside the village hundreds of years ago. And as that old man, I would steal children from the village, and I would rape them, and I would eat them. And in this dream, the villagers were chasing and killing me as this old man. And I woke up in this awful state of terror, feeling the energy of that dream. And it allowed something to settle in me, because I thought, well, okay, maybe that was me. Maybe I did that. in another time. I don't know, but it allowed something to settle in me in terms of that question of why me, why me, why me? It was a deep acceptance of, I've been all of these things, the victim and the perpetrator. And that was a really significant piece of my healing puzzle, in a sense, was to really accept that. There was also this thing of recognizing deep in meditation that my uncle, the man that had raped me, he and I had been lovers in some other time. So there was this thread and spark of confused, contorted energy, that was also being worked out in whatever ways these things get worked out, and the strands and the streams through time and through dimensions would perhaps be too much for us to take on board, but many, many different elements get woven in. And if we pay enough attention and keep our nose to the not to the grindstone, but just keep willing to hold it all, willing to open to it all, then we get to that point where really what we need to know and what we need to see becomes conscious again. And it makes sense of everything, So the impact of being sexualized at a very early age shaped my life, because that was at the forefront of my mind, was wanting to have sex, with older men from the age of 5 years old.
Wow.
So I had, and luckily I didn't find a lot of older men that were willing to take me up on that. I was very protected after that experience with my uncle, which started about the age of 3 and ended about the age of 7. And so I fell in love with school friends, and there was this constant yearning, but no sexual connection at all. But there was this deep craving, because I realized now I was, in a sense, possessed by the spirit of lust, if you like, to put it in sort of biblical terms. There was an energy that was active in me that consumed me. Yeah. And it formed the basis of my addictions then, I went on, once I left home, to drink and use a lot of drugs and have vast amounts of sex with a vast amount of people, most of whom I didn't know their name or anything. And as a gay man in a city, you can do that. It's sexuality sex is very, very available to gay men in a way that perhaps not as much to the heterosexual community. And I made full use of that, and it drove my life. It was all I wanted, because sex and sexual energy is like currency. I wasn't getting energy from the earth. I wasn't plugged into the earth. I wasn't plugged into the heavens at this stage particularly. And sexual partners were food, in a sense. And you exist in a world where that is currency, being wanted, being found attractive, and then the act of having sex with somebody, it's just energetic currency. And it's vampirism, in a sense. And a lot of energy is traded in that. But I was also aware, as the healing journey progressed, that I had been implanted with energetic devices that made it a multidimensional experience, in terms of reptilian races siphoning a huge amount of sexual energy out of my system, or stimulating a huge amount of sexual energy, and that energy just being siphoned off into other dimensions. And again, this sort of stuff doesn't get talked about in most psychologists' offices or stuff, but it's the stuff you become aware of when you work multidimensionally, and it makes you a bit crazy at times, but it also helps to make a lot of sense of things, So something that happened for me in that initial rape was that it was so traumatic that I was out of my body from that age onwards. And that too was part of my multidimensional toolkit, because that kept doorways open that perhaps wouldn't have stayed open if I had stayed in body, if I'd had a nurturing, regular sort of life where I had been encouraged to be embodied. And that wasn't present in my life because both my parents were addicts too, so they really weren't available for any sort of real nurturance. And so I stayed out of body until these memories started opening up, and there was an integration of the child aspect, and that ended this craving, this emptiness inside that I had attempted to fill with sex, drugs, food, alcohol, whatever, and that was ended. Now, my addictive process circles around sugar at the moment, and that's about as far as it goes. But yeah, it has been a crazy, crazy journey. And as I say, a lot of these addictions is that my higher self was always present, even if I wasn't conscious of it as my higher self. So at the age of 15, when I was really starting to drink a lot and I'd had my first alcoholic blackout, I woke up in the morning with a huge black hole where the night before should have been. And a voice said to me, and I heard it inside and outside, and it said to me, you should never, ever touch alcohol. And I knew in every cell of my being that was true. I knew that I was just like my mother and my father, and I couldn't drink well. And a split second later, I had pushed that guidance out of the way because I thought, I'm not going to have any fucking social life or any life at all if I don't drink. So I'm drinking. And so I set up my own conditions because I didn't align myself with the guidance that was always available to me. So you could say it's a hero's journey to overcome addiction, but I was also given every opportunity not to walk down the path of addiction too. So I pushed and pushed and pushed to destroy myself, really, until I got called on my addictions. And that was the first experience of cancer, which was, okay, you're at the end of the road here. You're about to die. Is this what you want? You've always lived as if you wanted to die and you're about to get that wish met. Is that really what you want? And then I had to reel it all back in and think, shit, no, actually, I was having a 40-year-long temper tantrum and digging my heels in and saying, no, I won't do this. But,
a stubborn soul makes a stubborn human. I think that's why we were chosen.
Yeah, and it's and so it looks heroic, but again, it was my own stubbornness that created the conditions of the cancer. It was me blocking life force in and saying, no, I will not live this life that you've set up for me. I fucking well won't. And as soon as I came into alignment and said, yeah, okay, I will, the cancer was gone within a month.
Wow.
And it was, stage 4 liver cancer, and I wasn't expected to live.
I didn't know it was stage 4 liver. I didn't know it was stage 4 liver, and in addition to the other stuff. But I mean, that's profound.
Yeah, and I didn't do anything other than change my mind about living. It had been pointed out to me very clearly that you were living as if you want to die, because I had been drinking and avoiding any sort of responsibility for myself at all. And as soon as I changed that, as soon as I stopped the resistance, and it wasn't all, a big chunk of my resistance. My resistance has taken many, many forms and has taken, many, many years to whittle down, and that's an ongoing journey. But a big chunk of my resistance had manifested in the cancer, in the liver. I was asking, will you be the liver of your life, in effect, And I eventually decided, okay, I will. And as soon as I made that decision, the cancer was gone, only because I was allowing enough life force to flow through me rather than forcing it to divert around me, and that was it. I didn't do anything other than change my mind. So again, I can't claim any heroics there other than,
but that's a good point though. And it of course we can't, I don't know that we can understand all this, but I can relate to this. I mean, it's like, there wasn't a predetermination, I don't think, but that there was a plan. And then you have this relationship with the higher self, the one that said you shouldn't drink alcohol, the one that told me things that I didn't listen to, the one that we all did.
Yeah.
So it was almost like that's the whetstone. That's the how you hone your soul or shine your soul, or I don't know. So you can look at it and go, oh, well, we coulda, woulda, shoulda, but without the coulda, woulda, without that, it wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be me. You wouldn't be you, right? So
No, but somewhere along that, in a dimension not too far from here, there's a version of me that perhaps stopped drinking at 15 and fuck knows what his life looks like.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah. I can relate to that. Yeah.
Mm.
And then you said something too, which I don't want to get off the subject, but you said something about implant. If I look at, and I haven't come out with all my stuff. I mean, I have over the years talked about a lot of things that happened to me, or that I did. I'm going to say that nothing happened to me. But there's more as time goes on. There's more and more. I'm more and more aware that so much of what occurred, I brought in with me.
Hmm.
So, for instance, when something occurred at an early age or whatever, that something was activated, something was reactivated, a frequency band or something that attracted these scenarios that were not conducive to a life of ease and grace. You know what I mean? And you look back now, for me, it takes some of the sting off of this incarnation and decisions that were made, or whatever. So I think that was a good point. And I think that doesn't just apply to the sexual trauma. I think it applies to a lot of things.
Yeah. It's another thing that happened, years ago when I was on my conscious journey, and I was asking, because there were so many elements of my life that seemed crazy and quite extreme, and I was asking again, why, and I was shown this image of a huge wall that dropped deep into the ocean, and that we were dropping depth charges, and these depth charges, and the wall, it was shown to me that the wall was the construct of the human condition, this huge wall, and we were dropping these depth charges that were floating slowly down along the wall. And I was watching this and being told that this is the wall this is the construct of the human condition, and you are dropping these, you're experiencing the very depths of the human condition, some of the darkest realities of the human condition, and how you collapse that construct of the human condition is by opening your heart to it all, which is what you were talking about initially. You can't reject or resist anything. You have to open to everything and accept it all. And when you accept everything as being okay, when it becomes acceptable to me, then these depth charges explode and collapse the construct of the human condition, because they're explosions of love right at the base of the construct, right at the foundation of the wall that we have all participated in constructing over thousands and thousands of years, So it's beautiful, I think, that we do this work and we get to open our heart to the most ridiculous, the most ugly aspects of ourself and humanity through, all these sorts of methodologies that are coming available now. But basically, it's about staying with something, however painful it is, however ugly it is, it's just staying with it long enough for it to really open up and emerge and lose all its charge, to become neutralized in your field. And that usually means bringing it into the heart. That seems to be the quickest way to do it. And then it collapses for us as an individual, doesn't it? But it also, because we are what we are all intimately woven into the human collective, then it collapses it more and more for the collective too. And it's beautiful. And that's very humbling, that it's like, I know that I elected to do some deep work on in the field of sexuality in this lifetime to help clear up that mess. And so you have to really experience some of the wound, because the condition of rape on this planet is the planet is being raped. Everything is being raped on this planet, so you have to experience and know what rape is at this fundamental level in order to help to disentangle it, I think, in a sense. And we've all got the pattern of rape in us somewhere. And it's a planetary energy. It is rapacious. The planet is being eaten alive by what we have set loose, in a sense, what we have co-created. And we have to bring that to a stop by owning it in ourselves,
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big factors that I see with, our stories is, in particular, with sexual energy, right, is suppression. So I might suppress my sexual desires. I might resist an alternate lifestyle. I might suppress the perpetration upon me, the violation. It's the same energy. It just has a different, on the surface, it looks different. Did you go through that in terms of what was perpetrated upon you? And did you suppress anything in terms of your alignment with your own sexuality? I mean, do you relate to any of that? Was there any of that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Wales in the 60s. I was born in 1963. And, I thought that if people knew that I was gay, that my only option would be to commit suicide. And that's an intense pressure to grow up with as a teenager, when you're raging with sexual energy because you're being triggered by, whatever forces are running through you that aren't your own, as well as all of the hormonal stuff, the teenage stuff that's going on anyway, and being in love with one or other of my best friends at the time, and knowing that there was nothing I could do about that, because I was so ashamed. I hated myself for being gay, and really, really wanted to be different.
Wow.
So again, there was this huge pressure, and I was just living a lie. I felt, my family situation with addicts as parents, where we were my father was the small town doctor, meant to be respectable, putting on this front, but life behind closed doors was complete chaos because there was huge violence between my mother and, it was crazy. So it was just one lie after another, this complete facade of normality that was cracking and crumbling all over the place, and a bit like what we're living through today, in a sense. And so by the time I was in my 20s, and I lived presenting to the world a face of, I'm okay. Don't ask me anything. Just accept what I'm telling you, that I'm okay. And I always appeared to be happy for the most part. And I drank a lot. I was smoking from an early age. As soon as I found drugs, I was, into those headlong. So I was self-medicating, and that the drugs and the alcohol were the anesthetic I needed to keep me on the planet for long enough until I was in a place for my healing to start, to start that journey, because I needed some sort of medication to numb the pain. And alcohol and drugs were fine, and sex, anything to take my mind off the emptiness, the horrible emptiness that most of us live with to one extent or another. So yeah,
all of the above too, because my own experience, you start putting that Molotov cocktail together. I mean, I realized this actually during this integration period. I had a period of time when I was, and you can relate to this, I know. I would say it didn't last too long, maybe a year and a half. where I was doing meth in one form or another, MDMA capsules or ecstasy. But it was an absolute. Uh, it was done. If I did it, even now, if I did it now, which I wouldn't, I would immediately go into that frequency band, and that would be sex addiction, with no holds barred. So, I think that's a pretty wild place to be. I know you can relate to it, and it is a way to numb. And I love what you said about in the early part of the show where you're talking about how you were being basically siphoned. Your energy was being siphoned. A lot of times we think, if we look at the narratives of the archons and of any nefarious, astral energy that's trying to take our energy, we think, they feed off conflict and ego and emotion and so on. And that's probably true. But I love what you said, because it can also come through that crazy, wild pursuit of nirvana through reckless abandon.
Yeah.
in that lifestyle. That's
and distorted sexual. I knew that that I was physically implanted when my uncle raped me, that something came through him.
Yes.
So it had probably happened to him at a similar, young age to the way these things cascade down the generations, and that it was implanted into me. And I was driven by the energies of that implant, and that's extraordinary. And I think that is what so many of us have as a subconscious awareness, but is really, really frightening to people to open up to the fact that our multidimensionality means that there are all of those levels to integrate, to work with. Those are the reptilian aspects, the reptilian genetics that we are a part of us too. Those reptilian genes are part of the human makeup, along with all of the Pleiadian, the Arcturian, all the lovely ones. They're the not so lovely ones too, which makes this such a melting pot. And we have to integrate all of that too. That's part of our journey.
Did you have? And I'm asking this because I did. But did you have? Third eye dimensional experiences that mirrored or were copies or replicated the sexual distortion in the physical? In other words,
was I having astral sex?
No. Were you well, I don't know. I mean, that could be. I'm just in a sense. In other words, were you experiencing it in dimension as well? I know you were out of body, and a lot of people, Morgan talks about it, how they, like you said, it's actually kind of two things. It's both an escape, but it's also a blessing because you guys honed your abilities to connect. What I was talking about was let's just say like nightmarish type of conscious dimensional experiences, even if they were lucid dreams, that kind of led to the reality of the connection between what happens here and what's going on in other places. But anyway, just, violation, rape, molestation. I mean, just the ugly side of it.
What I had dreams of as a child were vampires. And I realize now that was a part of it, because the vampire was really scary, but also sexual, seductive. And there was that element of it. And I was having dreams about vampires before I'd ever seen a vampire movie or anything, So when I saw Dracula on the television, so it was like, oh, gee, that really shocked me. And I was fascinated then by vampires, because that was a part of my in a landscape, in a sense. And years later, that was a crazy piece of integration, because I'd had this fascination. So I would love watching vampire films, reading about vampire stories, all of that sort of stuff. And I had an experience then of being on a planet that was run by vampires, literal vampires in terms of blood sucking, and there was a disconnect with that energy. And at that point, my interest in vampires stopped completely. And so I realized again that was something that was hooked into my system. Perhaps that was a part of me. Perhaps there was a dimension of me that had that was a part of that planet or that star system, whatever it was, that was vampiric or vampiric. And when I experienced it, was on that in that dimension, on that planet, and really recognized it, and then disconnected, it all ended, and it ended sort of like that. I no longer had any interest. So
That's wild. That's wild. That disconnect part, and then even listening to you, because I remember even as a kid, you know, I don't know. I was born in '61, so I was probably watching the same things you were. I remember being sexually charged as probably, I want to say 9, 10, you know, and so on with the vampires. I thought they were sexy as hell. I read all the Anne Rice books as an adult. So there's something to be said for that. You know, somebody else mentioned zombies. I remember gargoyles as a kid.
And I think the zombie thing, because we're looking around and it does seem like there are a lot of Walking Dead, doesn't it? You know, a lot of people do seem to be Walking Dead at the moment, and quite zombie-like. And I've heard Jason Estes talk about them as NPCs, non-player characters, sort of thing. And it's like, huh. So a lot of these things come from a lot of what is reflected back to us from the creative levels in terms of films and movies and TV shows. It comes from our deep psyche as well, the deep collective psyche, you know, and then it gets reflected back to us in a way we can relate to. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff on zombies now, isn't there, and has been for years. So I think we're being shown that a lot of people are literally like, you know, wandering around like the Walking Dead, because they are so given over to false frequencies. They have been more or less completely taken over by the false frequencies of, you know, well, all of the different levels of it, you know, but we are plugged into, and if we're not plugging into natural sources of energy and of frequency, the earth, nature, our soul, the sun, the universe, and if we're spending a lot of time plugged into you know, that lower vibrational technology and shopping and just thoughtless stuff, then you're opening your field up literally to this vampire technology, in a sense. And it's part of that movement of transhumanism and artificial intelligence, that we are electrical beings. We are beings of energy, and that energy can work its way into our system. It's why it is so important to spend time in nature and away from your electronics and stuff, just to really charge the body and the field with those natural frequencies. It's really, really vital. And the energies of nature at the moment are just like crazy. I mean, they're just pumping so strongly. It's so it takes seconds to drop in and really flood your field with those frequencies. So
that's as I sit here and look at it, I wouldn't, lifesavers, you know, the nature. But back to the sexual energetics, you know, that are starting to, you know, become clearer, I guess, through this deep dive that I think we're all inevitably going to take if we're not taking it or have taken it. But in a story like yours, like so many people have common common, I guess, life templates that come on this show. They're in these communities, black sheep, dysfunctional family, rejection, abandonment, and so on, sexual violation. One of the things that I think we are going to gain more clarity on, if we're not already, is those traumatic characters or antagonist characters in our lives, particularly mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, that played a significant role. The ones that we have to work hardest on to neutralize the charges. So, like in your situation, I mean, I think one of the things we're starting to understand is the massive repercussions that these things have on our relationships, on our self-assessment, self-worth, and so on. How did that play out for you? Did it take? Is it taking? I mean, what kind of challenge did it create in terms of the impact it had in your relationship with parents, with friends, with relatives? I mean, because it affects us.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, it affects us when, I can think of my big brother, 2 years, 8 months older than me, and the things that were presented to me by design, I'm sure, by soul agreement, I'm sure, or maybe I'm not, but the impact of little things on young people that then in turn affect everything else. And then we have to go back in and 0 point and neutralize this relationship with mother, father, brother, and so on. Was that a challenge for you? Is it still a work in process? I mean, where are you at with that?
For the most part, I feel pretty neutral around my parents, and that was a mess. They were lousy parents, to be honest. They just weren't present as parents, but they were good people, and they were very popular people. They're both dead now. They're dead a long time, and I was glad because they were both a handful. And my mother was getting to that stage where I was just worried about what she would do with her drink, because she never stopped drinking, and she would drink and drive, and she would smoke and drop cigarettes. And I thought she's either going to burn the house down or she's going to kill somebody in the car, that sort of thing. So when she died, it was a relief. And I had to do a lot of anger work, but who doesn't around their parents? Who doesn't? But there was one stage where I was on an amazing anger workshop with a man who had his whole family murdered. And he'd worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on anger and whatever, and then set up this foundation in the UK to help people deal with their dark and heavy emotions. And so I was bashing a stack of telephone books with a rubber tube, really hammering at it, shouting and screaming. And all of a sudden, again, I popped out of my body. And as I was watching me down there hammering this pile of telephone directories, and we were getting shredded by the force of the rubber hose hitting them. And up here, I was standing with both my parents, and we were holding hands in this weird triangle, and I recognized them as two of my greatest friends in all eternity. Wow. And it was such a surreal experience, because it didn't stop the rage, but again, it made sense of everything. And I deeply understood that the nature of these contracts, these multidimensional contracts we set up, that they had agreed to be these people for me so that I would get the experience that I needed. And that is shocking, to see that, because it does stop the blame in its tracks, in a sense. I still had and took ages to work through all of the anger, and sometimes I still found pockets of it, just as I found pockets of grief around not feeling well parented, but there is this deep sense of responsibility for the fact it's like, oh, I agreed to this.
Mm.
I really did help set up the template and write the template for this life. And that it takes you out of victim mode, which is beautiful. And I can be in victim mode just like anybody else, but I'm never allowed to stay there for too long. And that experiences like that really stop that in its tracks. And so I'm eternally grateful for for those multidimensional experiences that I've had all of my life. Even as a little child, I was wide open, and I've always had those experiences. And the grace I have experienced along the way has been extraordinary, to be honest. And that's that's in a very real sense, my higher self has been much, much stronger than my personality and has kept me on this planet, because if I'd been left to my own devices, I would have killed myself. But it was always these shining moments of where my higher self really pushed through the dimensions and gave me a kick up the arse and said, look, pay attention, And I've had so many of those because I was so off track for such a lot of the time, and so wayward and so determined. And so it's been a close call, I think. And, in many ways, and I have walked close to the edge for a lot of my life. I have always teetered on the edge of the cliff, in a sense, enjoying that balance. And now I feel as if I'm starting to walk straight up the hill rather than teetering on the path that meanders around.
Good, lead the way, because I've been walking on the edge with you. No, I'm kidding. The thing about about the impact of our sexual experience, intimacy, true intimacy, and what I'm talking about is not just the physical intimacy between two people. The potential purity of it that becomes more distant in terms of being able to attain because of these experiences. So I'm talking about that. I'm talking about intimacy as an openness and real relationship and holding hands and truly loving each other in a full, well-rounded way. You are, the epitome. Your energy is balance and wisdom and love. Sometimes it's a lot easier to project and portray, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm talking about all of us. I mean, it's easier for us to speak about something than it is to actually be something. Was it a challenge for you to find real intimacy after starting out in terms of what was truly sacred and intimate and violated? Was it a challenge to find real intimate and pure connections? Both.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it still is for me, and I don't know that will ever be healed, in a sense. I watch what you and Morgan are doing, and it takes my breath away, because I haven't given myself a lot to relationship. In a sense, what I've chosen is this other inner path of healing, rather than healing in relationship. And I've had relationships, and they've been, challenging, and a lot of addictive stuff coming out, and a lot of very dark codependent stuff. And the pain of relationship really helped to pull the memories of the sexual abuse to the surface. It was that sort of tension in relationship that pulled that up to the surface. So that hasn't been, for me, easy at all. And it isn't something, I still have a huge amount to learn from that. Connections, because I didn't have connections much as a child. I was in my own world, in a sense, and I understand the work I do is aided by that. Maybe there's a trade-off in terms of human relationship. I don't know. I mean, I'm surrendered in that sense, like if it's in my highest interest to then explore intimate relationship, I'm open to that. But it isn't something now that I'm craving or longing in a sense, because I feel way more complete in myself and happier than ever. And yet, I don't feel I've ever experienced true meeting in relationship.
Yeah, that's I appreciate the honest answer. You know, a lot of people look at someone like you and think that everything is just, and I'm not knocking anybody, but sometimes we, you know, what's that old saying? Master one thing rather than, what is it? Master one
Jack,
thing. Yeah.
Jack of all trades, we call it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
master of none, in a sense.
Yeah. Yes. So it's like, because and obviously we're all working our way. This isn't judgment. We're just trying, I'm trying to, you know, we're all trying to get better and to grow and so on. But if I look at the question of what we're talking about, these topics, the relationships, the intimacy, the sacred sexuality, the distortion that we're coming out of, and so on and so on, I think this is like really virgin territory. I don't think anybody had. I actually saw a contemporary and others, you know, speaking from a level of, I don't know, master genius in on subjects that, you know, I feel like, you know, for instance, Morgan and I are pretty deep in this. We're just as bewildered as we are with what's occurred. We're not driving this boat. There's something very magical about a space just within one person alone, like you, as you're talking about your own space when I asked you that last question. And then to have two in a space of surrender that's way beyond the human term surrender. There's just some kind of magical, fertile space that we're moving into. I don't see how what I observed is what I was referring to. It just doesn't hold any salt. I mean, this is like where the cosmic rubber meets the road. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, this is something like you were talking about at the top of the show, where we used to speak things into existence. I fully believe that and remember that. And so now, you know, what's that going to look like? Because there definitely seems to be a link between our sacred sexuality and our creativity, if they are not one and the same, really, and the instant manifestation, all that stuff.
I think they're one and the same, aren't they? I think we are crucibles of creation. And there are certainly forces active on the planet that would like to keep us disconnected from that awareness, so that we can be batteries to feed and fund other systems, or we come alive as the suns that we are. You know, we are each of us a shining star. I truly believe this. I've experienced this on occasion, where energy has just lit up inside me, and you know, that's not of my doing, not of my wishing. It just happens from time to time, and it's like, oh, this is what we are meant to be living. And I think we're moving towards that. Each one of us is that. I mean, years and years and years ago, I was told each one of you has the capacity to be a star in the heavens in your own right, to be a planetary system. That, you know, planetary systems started as individuals working their way through their own stuff and evolution just continues. So in billions of years' time, maybe we will be stars. Who knows? But I think,
or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
You know,
we started there. Yeah,
and
maybe we
have,
should.
and have dropped down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we have the capacity to um, to be so unbelievably extraordinary, and it starts, the clearing of all of the levels and layers of wounding and that we have cloaked ourselves in now. I think we're moving out of that phase. It'll go on for quite a while, but it's been intense. And we're starting to come into a recognition of creatorship, co-creatorship, where it's not creating for ourselves. It's not demanding, the car, the house, the holiday, the money in the bank. It's, or what would life like to create through me? Can I give this energy field back to life and say, here, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this space? What are we going to do with this energy? How much joy, how much beauty, how much love can we create here? And I think more and more of us are waking up to that potential. And sexuality, I'm not sexually active at the moment and haven't been for a long time. And that has been sometimes very, very difficult, very challenging to be celibate, coming from the extremes that I have known. Celibacy is its own challenge and its own reward, in a sense. And so extraordinary fields of loneliness have come up to be integrated that, in the past, I would have gone out and found somebody to fix that with, and I've forgotten completely what I was talking about now.
Yeah,
all of that
that's
stuff
groovy.
gets integrated,
Yeah,
and as we become whole in and of us, because you can't do what you and Morgan are doing if you're needy of the other. It has to be really coming from that place of wholeness and integrity in and as yourself before you can do what you're doing. And I say this now, I don't think, because there are many, millions of people on the planet who aren't in relationships, you don't have to be in relationship to experience this sort of unification. And I think what I'm experiencing at the moment, these layers of feminine experience, feminine lifetimes opening up and integrating in me is sort of along similar lines to some of what you have talked about. It's integrating so that I move beyond the identity as a man, as a gay man, into just being much, much more androgynous.
Yes.
And feeling at one with everything rather than polarized into this little identity of I'm a man in this lifetime. It's
That's true. I mean, I remember 10 years ago getting this whole download on Soulogy, and it was like, okay, everybody's under this tent, whether you like it or not. So Soulogy is another word for what? Holy Spirit, whatever. But if you think about the segmentation of society and as we converge and integrate polarities, I mean, I guess the biggest one would be male female, but if it's not, it's either that or it's the connotations around sexual preference. You're right. I mean, it's all one and the same, and that's kind of
and the weird thing is that's the only polarity is male and female, because everything splits into it's either a masculine energy, the sun, the moon, masculine, feminine, right, wrong, good, bad, black, white, night, day. They're all either split into it's a masculine energy or a feminine energy. True. Not good, but not that there's better or worse. It's so whenever you're working to balance or to neutralize polarities, you're always bringing into a deeper state of alignment and balance your own inner world of masculine and feminine, because there is only that polarity. There are only those two forces that operate, the masculine principle, the feminine principle, and when they unite, then something else becomes born.
Let's see, the unknown aspect. You
Yeah,
you obviously are have been for quite some time very service oriented and also creative. Um, Now you've been celibate for quite some time. I was celibate almost 5 years before I met Morgan, and
yeah,
there's something about that. I was unconscious. I did it out of trauma. You know what I mean? But the benefits of it. I guess what I'm saying is, you're in this period of celibacy, and I think a lot of people are. To be honest with you, and yet let me just put it this way: what is your creativity quotient during this period of celibacy, as opposed to in the past when you were sexually active? Do you see any kind of connection between your personal alignment and further alignment of your own sexual power, sacred sexual power, and what you're putting out?
yeah. I mean, when I was sexually active in an addictive sense, I mean, I would have a huge amount of sex. So that would absorb most of my time, the hunting for sex, the searching for it, the being available for it. And I was available 24/7, for sex. If somebody only had to look at me in the right way, and I would be right there, and looking for wherever we could go to have sex. Car park, in an alley, it was so sordid. It was, just non-stop availability. And that's really, so that takes a lot of creative energy. I mean, I would step out of my home, and internally I had a map of all of the places I could go to look for sex in London. And I would feel, I mean, that was what my psychic ability was being used for, because I would feel them pinging and it'd be like, okay, we're going there today. And that was, so that was what my creativity was focused on, was getting laid all the time. Because that was my food, that was my sustenance, that was my self-worth, that was what I lived for. So that took up a huge amount of energy. There wasn't much energy left for living, to be honest, and that was what led to the liver cancer.
Now, at this time, like in that time period, were you consciously connected? In your opinion, were you?
I was aware, but I was really struggling with that connection.
Right.
I was really angry, and I was using it very much for my own gratification rather than any level of service. To be honest.
But I mean, like, did you have were you seeing clients at that time? Were you were you doing anything like that?
Not at that time.
Okay.
I had done before, and I had worked energetically and stuff. And then, as my addiction had really taken hold, all of that had fallen away. And I had, traveling in the States, I had acknowledged that I was living a really messy, fucked up life. And it was like, please take this away from me. Take this, because I was very, very psychic, much more psychic than I am now. And I was using it badly. And I said, just take this away. And it was taken away. And again, that's one of those things. It's like, oh shit, I wish I hadn't done that, because I know that there was a pathway that could have opened up for me, a beautiful, beautiful, shining pathway. And I was always encouraged down that pathway. And I was like, no, fuck off. I'm doing it my way. My way always involved destruction and mayhem and sex and drugs. It was always that.
That's right, man.
So I didn't have any energy for creativity. I was working as a gardener on and off, but only making enough money to go out and get laid and drunk and high and, whatever. Cancer and HIV, and in this country there was a really good system of benefits to support people, particularly those who had terminal illnesses. So I was on these high rate of benefits. So I was being supported by the state as I went on a profound healing journey then, that really sort of unraveled a lot of stuff, and was in 12-step fellowships for many years around alcohol, drugs, sex, money, food, the whole lot. I did the 12 steps over and over and over again in lots of different fellowships, and that's a profound journey in itself. And if anybody is battling with addiction, I would really recommend the 12-step process as a great way to do it, because you get to talk about, you're in a room full of people dealing with the same shit, and they know when you're lying, and there's nothing you can say that won't have been heard 1,000 times before, so
Sure.
it's a beautifully safe space to open up and to be held through your addictive process. I hated it at first and came to love it, and then recognized that it also becomes, or the 12-step fellowships can become an addiction in themselves.
True.
And you have to move on from that, so
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking the 12 steps. It's a beautiful, beautiful process.
Yeah.
But and then I started training. Then I went to Garden Design College and started training and became qualified in garden design and worked in that. And then, but all the time knowing that this other stuff is what would actually take over at some point. And then it did in 2013. The guidance was, okay, you've got to give up the garden design and the garden maintenance and do this. And take it seriously. You've got to get a website. You've got to start charging properly. And I froze completely because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have any sense that this would support me or anything. And it was a couple of years later that I got kicked out of that particular closet then, and was launched by somebody that liked the work I was doing. And so I went from 0 to 60 overnight, in a sense, because I had maybe 2 clients a month to 15 a week and teleconferences, and it was an extraordinary trajectory, but there had been years and years of work to prepare me for that, and it was lovely in the sense that I was terrified of it and not craving it, rather than, I think a lot of people, I certainly, when I first started my psychic development, which was sort of 30 years ago now, and I was thinking, okay, once I can talk to dead people, my life will be sorted, because I'll be able to earn money doing that then, and it'll be easy. And what I have recently recognized is that I have been on a 30-year apprenticeship, in a sense, and I have just been informed that apprenticeship is over now and we're in a different phase, but it has literally been 30 years. And I was thinking in my naivety, when it started, a couple of years of training and I'll be sorted. Well, the depth of resolution that has to happen to bring us to availability is more profound than I ever recognized.
That's a really great point, because I think this is what I was referring to earlier about the contemporaries representing themselves. I would just have to say, for lack of a better word, is a master frequency on whatever subject related to ascension and growth that you see out there. And I'm not knocking anybody. We're all finding our way. But my point is, when you 30 years ago, when this stuff comes in, because it could have been 10 years for me, and it was 5 years for that person and 17 for this person, there is a very big jolt to your reality, and and rightfully so, it's a lift to the ego, whether you're conscious of it or not. But the reality is, when that all comes in, we're just a baby. It's the infancy of our awakening. And I would have to say, for the most part, many of us are no more than, maybe 12 years, if you want to put it proportionate to.
I still feel like a toddler, I still feel like I'm getting baby steps still.
Yeah. But the other thing I think that's significant about your journey, I didn't mean to keep you for so long. We're already half an hour over, but is how it comes in. I'm talking about 30 years later, or whenever that happened, 2013. There's a lot to be said for. And I've watched it. I've watched it with myself in little steps at times. I feel it happening now for myself, for Soulogy. I feel it happening for humanity. And that is where you have this this kind of like a turbocharged thrust. It all comes in. You know, we spend our time going, okay, well, I need to do this, or I'm going to talk to dead people, and this is how. And you got all that going on in the structure and the, you know what I mean, the patriarchal motions, right? What you know, but there's something to be said for the way it comes in, and like in your own situation, to go from 2 people to 15 people. I mean, there's something to be said for that. I think the way that you described it is the apprenticeship.
Yeah, that's
It's
what it
almost
was for
like
me.
I want to walk away with a takeaway with you going, I'm still an apprentice. I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's a nice mentality to have. I think of when you just said that too, I think of that old Kung Fu series, you know, where you snatch the pebble out of my hand.
Yeah.
That's when you've snatched the pebble out of the hand now, right? I mean, it's a different ball game. It's a whole different world. So yeah. Everybody's thriving on this conversation because I always do with David. I wish I had more time. We've been on an
Hey,
hour.
it's been a lovely
I know. I don't know why.
conversation.
Every time I talk to you, it's an hour show, and we end up going an hour and a half. I'm like, it feels like 10 minutes. You know, like
Yeah,
seriously, I look at it. You know, I in fact, it was at an hour 15, and I thought out of respect, I'm going to ask him. But next thing I know, I look up, it's an hour 30, and yeah, you know, we got 2 more shows today. Hopefully, we see David again in a few weeks.
That would be lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd, I'm deeply grateful you're on the planet. Huh? Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to the day that we can wrap our arms around each other.
Yeah, it'd be
I
nice
think
to
we'll all
meet.
get there. Yeah, I'm you know, I'm through trying to figure out how this is all going to happen, and just hold the I don't say the end result, but hold that we're already there.
Yeah.
Just physicalizing it is going to occur in my mind the longer I embrace you now. But I always have looked at you as to me a very brave, a very beautiful man, you know, and a great example. And the fact that you've had the life experience you've had isn't really what I'm pointing to, even though it's highly significant and we can all learn from it. But it's your energy that you carry, and I appreciate that because it's real, and that's what the world needs. So I love you, brother.
Yeah,
You take
love
care.
you too,
I'll see you in a few weeks.
Lots of love. Huh? Take care.
Peace
Bye-bye.
out. We'll be back in a little while. We have 2 more shows today, at least. So we'll be popping back in. We'll see you later, David. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.